All right, so everyone's been talking about this massive winter storm hitting the U.S. You know the one I mean. And we wanted to do a deep dive on it for you guys. We've got a stack of articles here from CNN, USA Today, and the Washington Post. And let me tell you, they're all saying this thing is the real deal.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a pretty significant event. And what really stands out to me is the sheer variety of impacts we're expecting. It's not just a snowstorm,
Definitely not your average snow day, huh?
Nope. We're talking potential record-breaking snowfall, crippling ice storms, and even severe thunderstorms in some areas.
Yeah, we saw that in the reports, too. It's kind of mind-blowing that one storm system can cause so much chaos over such a huge area.
Right, and this thing is enormous.
Yeah.
It's stretching over 1,300 miles, affecting like 62 million people across at least a dozen states. That's a massive footprint.
So where is the storm headed exactly? What's the trajectory looking like?
It's starting in the Central Plains, then it's going to move towards the Ohio Valley and finally slam into the Mid-Atlantic and the East Coast.
So basically, it's cutting a path right through the heart of the country.
Pretty much. And that path is going to dictate what kind of weather people experience.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are the main threats we're looking at here?
Well, on the northern side of the storm, it's all about the snow. We're talking heavy snow, blizzard conditions, high winds, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, the reports were mentioning something about historic snowfall. Like some areas could see their heaviest snow in over a decade.
Exactly. And some cities are even predicted to break their January snowfall records.
Wow. Which cities are we talking about?
Places like St. Louis, Kansas City, Indianapolis, they could be digging out for a while.
And how much snow are we talking about? What are the projections?
Well, parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and West Virginia could see anywhere from 8 to 12 inches of snow. And that's on the conservative side. Some areas might get even more.
That's a lot of snow. And what about the wind? How strong are we expecting the winds to get?
Forecasters are predicting gusts up to 40 miles per hour, which means blizzard conditions are definitely on the table for some areas.
So travel is going to be a nightmare.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially with the ice. We're seeing reports that Kansas City International Airport has already shut down its airfield due to ice.
Wow, so it's already causing disruptions.
Yep. And it's only going to get worse as the storm intensifies. They're saying travel could become nearly impossible in some areas with whiteout conditions, fallen trees, down power lines. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah, ice is definitely nothing to mess with. It can turn a simple walk to the mailbox into a dangerous adventure.
Right. And driving is out of the question in those conditions. It's just too risky.
We were reading about some pretty scary stories from the sources, like last January when a similar ice storm hit the central U.S. People were trapped in their homes without power for days, and first responders couldn't even reach them because the roads were so icy.
Yeah. It's a stark reminder of how quickly things can go south when you've got ice on the ground. And to make matters worse, they're forecasting a 1/4 inch of ice accumulation, with some areas potentially seeing even more.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of ice. So we've got the heavy snow, the blizzard-like winds, and the dangerous ice. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It definitely has the potential to be. But you know what's crazy? While all that's happening on the northern side of the storm, the south is going to be dealing with a completely different set of problems.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I almost forgot. We were reading about the potential for severe thunderstorms and even tornadoes. What's going on down there?
Well, on the southern side of this storm system, you've got warmer temperatures and a lot of moisture streaming in from the Gulf of Mexico. So instead of snow and ice, they're looking at heavy rain and thunderstorms.
And tornadoes. Seriously.
Yeah. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a level 3 out of 5 threat for severe storms in places like Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi. So damaging winds, hail, and even tornadoes are possible.
Level 3 out of 5. That sounds pretty serious.
It is. And it's worth noting that this comes just a month after that devastating tornado outbreak in the South in December. So people down there are probably on high alert.
Wow. So this one storm system is bringing blizzards to one part of the country and tornadoes to another. That's incredible.
It is. It just goes to show you how powerful and complex these weather systems can be.
And as if all that wasn't enough, they're saying that once this storm passes, we're going to get hit with an Arctic blast.
Yep. Temperatures are expected to plummet, dropping as much as 30 degrees below normal across 2/3 of the U.S.
Oh, man. That's going to make the snow and ice stick around even longer.
Exactly. It's going to lock everything in place, prolonging the hazardous conditions and making those potential power outages even more dangerous.
So it's like a 1-2 punch. First, the storm hits with everything it's got, and then it follows up with a knockout blow of frigid temperatures.
That's a great way to put it. And the worst part is that this cold isn't going anywhere fast. Forecasters are saying it'll stick around at least through the middle of January.
So even after the initial impact of the storm has passed, the dangers will linger.
Exactly. This is going to be a long-haul event for a lot of people.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the immediate, like, oh no, the snow and ice are coming. But this kind of storm, I mean, it's going to have some pretty long-lasting effects too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
We're talking about major disruptions to travel, power outages, potential safety hazards, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right. Like, what about the economic impact?
Yeah.
Businesses, schools, everyday life, it's all going to be affected.
Yeah, think about it. Schools and businesses are going to be closed. Supply chains will be disrupted. People might lose income from missing work. It can take a while for things to get back to normal after a storm like this.
For sure. And you know what else I was thinking about? All that snow and ice, it's going to melt eventually, and that could lead to some serious flooding problems.
That's a great point, especially if we see a rapid warm-up after the storm. That snow is going to melt really fast, and it could overwhelm drainage systems, cause a lot of localized flooding.
Yeah, especially in areas that have already had a lot of rain or snow recently. They could be in for a rough time.
Exactly. It's something we definitely need to be mindful of. So we've got the immediate dangers, the economic impacts, the potential for flooding. It really makes you think, you know, what can we do about all this? How can we prepare for these kinds of extreme weather events and minimize the risks?
That's the big question, isn't it? It can feel pretty overwhelming.
I hear you. Yeah. It's easy to feel that way. But I think the first step is awareness.
Yeah.
Taking these threats seriously and understanding what's at stake.
Right. So what are some practical things people can do to prepare?
Well, staying informed about the forecast is crucial. Knowing what's coming and when is key. Then you need a plan in case the power goes out.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you have flashlights, batteries, candles, things like that.
Oh, and extra blankets.
Yeah.
Definitely need extra blankets.
Absolutely. And don't forget about food and water. Make sure you have enough on hand to last a few days in case you're snowed in.
And medications, too. If you take regular medication, make sure you have enough to get you through.
All good points. And if you live in an area that's prone to flooding, you might want to think about having sandbags on hand just in case.
Yeah, good idea. And it's important to have a communication plan with family and friends, especially if you're in an area that's going to be hit hard. Make sure everyone knows how to check in and make sure everyone's safe.
Couldn't agree more. And don't forget about your pets. Make sure they have a safe.
And all the chaos.
Yeah, but they depend on us. So we have to make sure they're taken care of too.
So those are all great tips for preparing for the immediate impact of the storm. But what about the aftermath? What kind of resources are available to help people cope?
Well, there are a lot of great organizations out there that provide assistance after a disaster, like the Red Cross and FEMA. They can help with things like shelter food and other essential needs for people who have been displaced or affected by the storm.
Right. And there are often local community resources too, like churches, community centers, even just neighbors helping neighbors.
Absolutely. It's amazing to see how communities come together in times of need. It's really inspiring.
It is. It's like a silver lining in all the darkness, you know. But as we're talking about this storm and all its potential impacts, there's another aspect we need to address. And it's the elephant in the room.
You're talking about climate change.
Yeah. It's hard to ignore, isn't it?
It is. And while it's difficult to directly link any single weather event to climate change, scientists have been warning us for years that we can expect to see more extreme events like this as the planet continues to warm.
And this storm, with its crazy mix of heavy snow ice and severe thunderstorms, it kind of fits that pattern, doesn't it?
It does. And it's not just a one-off. We're seeing an increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events all over the world. Heat waves, droughts, floods, hurricanes. It's like the planet is becoming more volatile.
And that volatility has real consequences for people's lives and livelihoods. It's not something we can just brush aside.
Exactly. We need to adapt to these changes, and more importantly, we need to mitigate them. We have to address the root causes of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and transitioning to cleaner, more sustainable energy sources.
It's a global challenge. It's going to require global cooperation and action.
It will. But it also starts at the individual level. Each of us can make choices that contribute to a more sustainable future.
Like what kind of choices? What are some things people can do in their daily lives?
Well, we can all try to reduce our energy consumption, make an effort to choose sustainable products, support businesses that prioritize environmental responsibility, and of course we can support policies that address climate change.
So it's about making conscious choices. recognizing that we're all connected and that our actions have consequences.
That's a great way to put it. It's about taking responsibility for our impact on the planet.
And it's about understanding that even small actions can make a difference when we all do them together.
Absolutely. It's about collective action and a shared sense of purpose. It's about creating a movement for change.
It's a lot to process, you know. This storm really shows you just how powerful nature can be. And then you add in climate change, and it's hard not to feel kind of overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah, I get that feeling. It's easy to feel small and powerless in the face of these huge challenges.
So what do we do? Besides, stocking up on hot chocolate and blankets, what can people do to feel a little more in control?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, preparation. Having a plan in place for power outages, knowing your evacuation routes, checking on elderly or vulnerable neighbors, these are all things that can make a real difference in your immediate safety and well-being.
Okay, so those are the immediate actions. But what about the bigger picture? Like climate change, it feels like such a massive problem. Where do you even begin to tackle something like that?
Is massive, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that individual actions are meaningless or that we should just give up.
Yeah.
Every little bit helps.
So what are some things people can do, like in their everyday lives?
Well, there are a lot of things. We can reduce our energy consumption, make an effort to choose sustainable products, support businesses that are environmentally responsible. All those things add up.
And we can support policies that address climate change, right?
Exactly. Vote for candidates who take climate change seriously. Contact your elected officials and let them know it's a priority for you.
Right. Make our voices heard.
Yep. And talk about it with your friends and family. Spread awareness, start conversations. The more people who are engaged in this issue, the better.
So it's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Exactly. It's about collective action and a shared sense of responsibility for the planet.
And it's about hope,
Yeah.
right? Believing that we can make a difference.
Absolutely. We can't give in to despair. We have to believe that change is possible.
That's what I try to focus on, the idea that we can create a better future if we work together.
Me too. And I think this storm, as destructive as it might be, can also serve as a wake-up call, a reminder that we need to take climate change seriously and start taking action.
It's like a turning point.
Maybe it is.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We talked about the immediate threats of this storm, the long-term impacts, the economic consequences, the environmental concerns, and, of course, the elephant in the room, climate change.
It's been a deep dive, for sure.
But I think the takeaway here is that while we need to be prepared for the challenges ahead, we also need to be hopeful and proactive. We can make a difference if we all do our part.
Well said.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. I hope you found it informative and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners out there, stay safe, stay warm, and let's work together to build a more resilient future.